Okay, so I got the the membrane off of this rack too, and now I'm gonna take some of the fat off. Like as I said, I am not very enthusiastic of taking a lot of fat off, but if you see the fat on both sides, like for example, you see that there's about half an inch of fat here, but on this side, if you look it up, the same rib does not have it. So the reason is that if I make it really thin and it's not even, it's probably not gonna cook very well. So I'll remove a little bit of it, but I'm not gonna be just too enthusiastic, as I said, about removing too much of the fat, because I like this fat even when it is cooked. Most of this is going to render and it's going to be really very not much left. And each rib, even when you will cut each rib, each one of that will have a lot of meat and some fat, so I think that's fine. But if you see that it's fat here and most of this is fat, then you can probably just remove that some of that extra fat off. So as I said, I want to keep this fat on. The other thing is that when the difference between smoking a beef rib like this versus the brisket is that this usually is cooked at a little higher temperature, so you want to have a little bit of this fat so it prevents it from burning. I'm going to just remove a little extra fat, and it also depends on if you're going to make just one or two racks, then you may want to clean it up even a little more. Or if you have some of the people like my wife who doesn't like it fat and you want to make her happy, I rather just give her this rib here that has meat instead of just reducing the fat on it. But like this one, this section, if you look it up, it's good meat here, but if you look it up on this side, this is a lot more fat here. So I'm gonna just remove some of this because to make sure it's just even on it as well. Because I think if you remove more and the whole rack is not even, and in fact will, so make sure your your knife is really sharpened. I actually sharpen it before I start cutting cleaning my meat, and also I make sure that the meat is cold when you're doing it, because if you have left it on the room temperature, then it becomes softer and it's hard to take off the fat itself. Okay, I'm happy with this. I don't want to overdo this. So sometimes I don't like this this layer on the top of the meat. I may clean it up a little bit, but most of this is it's going to be just rendered off. If it was a competition, I'll probably clean it up a little bit more, but this is just hopefully like a good family meal tonight. So for this one, the only thing different than the brisket is that I use a hot sauce. You can use any hot sauce. I like to use the hot sauce that is liquidy. That's the key. I'm going to take this glove off so I can have my clean hand, and I will use, this one is like Frank's red hot sauce. I used the other kind, what is it called? Chula, or what is the company? So this is, because the reason is this is liquidy, and the reason is I'm gonna put some of this on. If you have people who don't like it, you don't have to put it on, but I think it does two things. It makes the rub stick well, and I think it tenderizes the meat as well, not just the taste itself. But if you have people who are really sensitive, it does give a little kick to the taste, I think. But so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it on both sides first. And then just because it's really wide rack, I usually do it on the sides as well. Just a little bit to make sure that, you know, it's just evenly distributed. Same thing with this one. Now after this, the rub that I use is the same secret rub, which is basically half salt and half kosher salt. So like last time I said, like, you know, I made this last video for my brother too. This one is also on his request. And it's important to have like a 16 mesh black pepper and the kosher salt. It makes a difference because this is not primarily that's not what gives the taste. The taste comes in fact from smoke binding, and the coarse salt and coarse black pepper is the one that binds the smoke to the meat. And compared to the brisket, there's a little bit more rub that you put on these ribs. The reason is that they have a strong taste and you want more smoke to bind to the ribs. And so make sure that, like, you know, the taste is like, you know, buffered. So as with the brisket, I'll do it on the sides and gently, like, you know, on each. If you see it a little bit more pocket here, you can just rub it. And then, you know, some people think that, oh, if you have to do this way too early, I usually don't. I haven't put the fire on yet. I'm gonna put the fire, like, you know, I'm gonna start the fire after I do this. But you know, just right before you're ready to do it is fine. The salt can potentially, like, you know, help break down the meat and tenderize it, but it's not like, you know, the salt amount that you're putting that goes in. It's basically when it combines with the heat, this kosher salt melts, and that's how I think the taste comes in. So you can see it how it looks. It's a little bit, as I said, more than I would put on my brisket, but that's basically it. And I put it on both sides. Remember this thing, like, this is the bone side, and the reason for this will give you an idea is to, in fact, bind the smoke to the meat and to the ribs itself. And I keep on shaking it a little bit because, you know, both salt and pepper are of different weight. So if you don't shake it, it will basically settle down lower. So this is the bone side. I'm doing all 4 sides. Actually, not 4, but 6 sides. Once again, like, the purpose is, this is how the smoke binds to the meat. It's not that, like, you know, if you have a 14-pound steak, I mean a 14-pound brisket, or, like, you know, this is, I think, probably 5 or 6 pounds of meat, that this much of the rub will give it taste. Okay, and that's basically it. It looks good. That's it. I'm gonna let it sit, and I'm gonna go light the fire, and then I'll show you how to put it on, and then I'll show you the other steps. So basically, after this, I'm gonna go light the fire. The temperature at which it is in fact done is a little higher than the brisket, and around 325. And the whole principle is to first get it smoked first. Once it's smoked, then I do wrap it in aluminum foil and give the time based on how much you want them to be, like how soft you want them to be. In a competition like ribs, you don't want the fall off the bone. That's not, in fact, the criteria for the meat to be soft. I don't put temperature probe in it, but once they get to 200 degrees, they're in fact cooked as well. You want to test it between the bones. You don't want to touch the bone, so you can test the meat before you take it off. But usually this is cooked by time and by your preference itself. So I will smoke it usually between 2 to 3 hours to get the color really dark, the one that I like, or when I see the bones starting to show up about 1/4 of the inch, so I know that the meat has retracted enough, and then I'll wrap it and I'll cook it for another 2 or 3 hours, and then I get done. But you can in fact put the barbecue sauce and put it back on the grill as well. I don't do it because I think it's soft enough and it's good enough at that time. Okay, I'll come back after the fire is ready.